The rain had been falling on Seattle for 3 days straight. Not the dramatic kind that announces itself with thunder and lightning, but the persistent, gentle type that seeps into everything. The kind that makes you forget what dry pavement looks like. Emma Hart stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her downtown office, watching water streak down the glass in endless rivulets. Behind her, blueprints covered every surface, plans for parks, gardens, public spaces, places where things grew, places designed for life. She'd been staring at the same sketch for 40 minutes, the memorial garden. Her pencil hovered over the paper, trembling slightly. She set it down, pressed her palms flat against the drafting table, breathed. The technique her therapist had taught her: 4 counts in hold, 4 counts out, as if breathing differently could change anything. Her phone buzzed. Rachel's name lit up the screen alongside a photo of the two of them from college, both laughing at something Emma could no longer remember. She let it ring twice before answering. "You're going." "Hello to you too," Emma said. "I'm serious. You're going tonight. I already made the reservation. Harbor View Restaurant, 7:30, table 12. Emma closed her eyes. "Rachel, it's been 8 months, Em. 8 months since the divorce was finalized. You can't keep hiding in that office." "I'm not hiding. I'm working." "You're surviving." Rachel's voice softened. "There's a difference." Through the phone, Emma could hear the familiar click of a camera shutter. Rachel was in her studio, probably editing a wedding shoot. She specialized in capturing joy engagement, photos, ceremonies, first dances. She had a gift for seeing love in its purest moments. It was both her talent and her curse, born from the accident that took her younger sister 5 years ago. Rachel understood that beauty and grief could exist in the same breath. "Who is this guy anyway?" Emma asked, already knowing she would go. Rachel had been her roommate when David first asked her out. She'd been there through the wedding planning, the slow unraveling, the silent implosion. If anyone had earned the right to meddle, it was Rachel. Marcus Tran, marketing director at a tech firm, kind, stable, loves hiking. He's perfect for you. You said that about David too. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the rain against Emma's window. "That was different," Rachel said finally. "You were different. You were trying to be what you thought you should be. Maybe it's time to try being what you actually are." After they hung up, Emma stood motionless in her office for a long time. Outside, the city was turning blue with dusk. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement, creating pools of amber light that reminded her of a Hopper painting. Lonely, beautiful, both. She thought about the last real conversation she'd had with David 3 weeks before he'd moved out. They'd been sitting at opposite ends of their pristine white couch in their pristine apartment, and he'd said, "It's like living with a ghost. You're here, but you're not really here." He wasn't wrong. She'd stopped being really present somewhere around year 5 of their marriage, right after the diagnosis. Right after the doctor had explained with practiced gentleness that certain types of endometriosis could make pregnancy nearly impossible. That there were options, of course, treatments, procedures, alternatives, but Emma had heard only one word: impossible. She'd never told David. She'd convinced herself she was protecting him, protecting them. But really, she'd been protecting herself from the moment he would look at her differently, the moment he would realize she was broken in a way that mattered. So she'd become perfect instead. Perfect wife, perfect home, perfect career. As if excellence in other areas could compensate for the one thing she couldn't control. It hadn't worked. Emma locked her office and took the elevator down to street level. Her apartment was a 15-minute walk, and she had 2 hours to decide what version of herself to present tonight. Across town, in a cramped studio apartment above a Korean BBQ restaurant, James Sullivan was having a staring contest with his laptop screen. The cursor blinked on a blank page. It had been blinking for approximately 6 hours. Behind him, his unmade bed was covered in books, research materials for the novel he wasn't writing. On every available surface, coffee cups formed a small ceramic city. The air smelled like old takeout and deadline anxiety. His phone rang. Tom Chen's name appeared with a photo of the two of them from their college days, both significantly younger and more optimistic. "Tell me you're not backing out," Tom said without preamble. James pushed back from his desk, creating a small avalanche of printed manuscript pages. "Define backing out." "James, it's just, look, I appreciate the thought, but you're going. Sophie's great. Yoga instructor, super chill, no expectations, just dinner, just being a human person for 3 hours. James glanced at his reflection in the darkened window. 2-day beard, ratty Columbia, sweatshirt hair that hadn't seen a comb since Tuesday. I'm not sure I remember how to do that. Shower, shave, show up, in that order. Tom paused. How's the book? It's... James looked at the blank screen. It's coming. Right. Tom knew him too well. Look, man, you can't keep punishing yourself. What happened with Claire it was 6 years ago. 7. Even worse, 7 years of carrying that around. Maybe it's time to put it down for one night and just live a little. After the call ended, James sat in the gathering darkness. He didn't turn on the lights. The glow from the restaurant sign below cast red and gold shadows across his walls, and in those shadows he could almost see all the versions of himself he'd tried to become. The promising young writer who'd published his first novel at 27. The one the reviews called a new voice in literary fiction. The one who'd signed a 2-book deal and promptly frozen, unable to write a single word that wasn't complete garbage. The boyfriend who'd panicked when Claire told him she was pregnant, who'd said all the worst possible things, who'd left in the middle of the night like a coward. The man who now lived above a restaurant, drinking too much coffee and not enough water, pretending that if he just sat in front of this screen long enough, inspiration would arrive like a bus he'd been waiting for. Tom was right about one thing: he couldn't keep living like this. James stood, surveyed the wreckage of his apartment, and headed for the shower. On his desk, the laptop screen had gone dark, the cursor blinking, unseen in the blackness. Harbor View Restaurant sat at the edge of Elliott Bay, all glass and steel and carefully curated ambiance. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of distant ferries traced lines across dark water. Rain fell in sheets, turning the city into an impressionist painting. Emma arrived at 7:25, exactly on time. She'd changed 3 times before settling on a simple black dress, elegant but not trying too hard. She'd pulled her dark hair back, applied minimal makeup. The woman in the mirror had looked composed, professional, entirely in control. The woman in the mirror had been lying. "Table for Hart," she asked the host. "Right this way." Table 12 was near the window, intimate, but not claustrophobic. Emma ordered water, declined wine, and checked her phone. No messages from Rachel. No escape routes. She watched other diners' couples bent toward each other over candlelight. A group celebrating something at the far end of the restaurant. An elderly man dining alone reading a book. She wondered if anyone could tell she was on a blind date, if desperation had a particular look. At 7:40, she checked her phone again. Still nothing. At 7:45, she saw him, a man in his mid-30s, dark hair slightly damp from the rain, nice shirt but no tie. He was scanning the restaurant, clearly looking for someone. His eyes found her, and something in his expression shifted relief mixed with apprehension. He walked toward her table. This was Marcus, she thought. Rachel's perfect match. Marketing director. Stable. Kind. He looked nothing like his description. "Sophie," he said, arriving at her table. Emma blinked. "I'm sorry." "You're Sophie, right, Tom's friend?" "No, I... She stopped, looked at him more carefully. He was looking back at her with equal confusion. "You're not Sophie," he said slowly. "I'm Emma. I'm waiting for Marcus." They stared at each other. Around them, the restaurant continued its elegant choreography of dining and conversation, but at table 12 time had done something strange. "I'm James," the man said finally. He glanced around the restaurant, then back at her. A smile started at the corner of his mouth, the kind of smile that suggested he was always half expecting the universe to play practical jokes on him. "I think we might have a situation." Despite everything, the divorce, the rain, the carefully constructed walls around her heart, Emma felt something crack open inside her chest. She started to laugh. Not a polite dinner laugh, but a real one, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine and forgotten. "Is this table 12? James asked. "It is. I was supposed to meet Sophie at table 14, and I'm waiting for Marcus at table 12. James pulled out the chair across from her. "May I?" Emma should have said no. Should have called. Rachel sorted out the confusion, waited for the right person. The safe person. The one who fit the plan. Instead, she said, "Please." He sat down, still smiling. Up close, he was all angles and shadows, like someone who spent too much time indoors. But his eyes were sharp, alive with curiosity, and something else. Something that looked like recognition. So, James said, this is either the best mistake I've ever made or the most embarrassing, Emma finished. Their waiter appeared oblivious to the cosmic joke unfolding at table 12. Good evening. Can I start you with something to drink? Emma and James looked at each other. Some unspoken agreement passed between them. Wine, Emma said. Red, something good. 2 glasses, James added. When the waiter left, they sat in silence for a moment. The rain drummed against the windows. Someone at the next table laughed at something. We should probably figure out what happened, Emma said. Probably. James pulled out his phone. But maybe we could just not for a minute. Emma understood what he meant. In this moment, they were nobody. Not divorced women or failed writers or people carrying secrets too heavy to name. Just 2 strangers who'd accidentally found each other in a city of 700,000 people. For a minute, she agreed. James set his phone down. Tell me something true. What? Something true, oh, Sharo, about you, not resume stuff, not the thing you'd tell a real blind date. He leaned back in his chair. We've already screwed this up. Might as well be honest. Emma should have deflected, should have given some safe, polished answer. Instead, she heard herself say, I spent 40 minutes today staring at a blank page. I'm supposed to be designing a memorial garden for children. And I couldn't draw a single line because every time I try, I think about... She stopped, shook her head. Sorry, that's too much. No, James said quietly. It's perfect. The wine arrived. They ordered food without really looking at the menu. And then impossibly, they started talking. James told her about the novel he couldn't write about the pressure of expectations and the paralyzing fear of failure. Emma told him about the divorce, about the relief and the guilt that came with it. He was funny without trying to be self-deprecating in a way that felt genuine rather than fishing for compliments. She found herself relaxing her shoulders, dropping from where they'd been hunched near her ears. 45 minutes passed. Then Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Rachel Marcus just texted. He's stuck in traffic on I-5. Accident near downtown. He says he's so sorry he's sitting at table 21 waiting for the host to figure out what happened. Have you seen him yet? Emma's expression must have changed because James's phone also buzzed at exactly that moment. He read the message, looked up at her. Sophie's at table 14. Marcus is at table 21. They stared at each other. Then James started laughing, that same surprise sound she'd heard earlier. Emma joined him, and for a moment they were just 2 people who'd accidentally discovered something rare, genuine, uncomplicated joy. We're at the wrong table, Emma said. Completely wrong. We should, yeah. James didn't move. We should definitely go find the right people. Neither of them moved. The waiter appeared with their appetizers, scallops for her, calamari for him. He set down the plates with practiced elegance and vanished back into the carefully orchestrated flow of the restaurant. Emma looked at the food, looked at James. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What if we didn't, she said. Didn't what? Go find them, the right people. She picked up her fork, surprised by her own boldness. What if we just stayed here? What if we finished this meal as exactly who we are? 2 people who accidentally ended up at the wrong table. James considered this. Outside the window, a ferry cut across the dark water, its lights blazing against the rain. My therapist would probably say this is me avoiding real connection again, he said, finding the most complicated way to not actually move forward. Mine would say I'm self-sabotaging, choosing the safe disaster over the risky hope. Are they right? Emma thought about Marcus waiting at table 21. Stable, kind, perfect on paper. She thought about going over there, starting the evening again, performing the careful dance of first impressions. She thought about the version of herself she'd have to be, the one who had it all together, who'd moved on gracefully from her divorce, who was ready for something new. She thought about how exhausting that sounded. Maybe, she said, but right now I don't care. James smiled, a real smile this time. No defense mechanisms or practiced charm, just honesty. Then let's stay at the wrong table. They touched glasses. The wine was good, dark and complex. Through the window, Seattle glittered in the rain, a city of 700,000 people, and somehow these 2 had found each other by accident. They talked through dinner. The conversation flowed in unexpected directions: books, architecture, the strange mathematics of grief. James told her about his first novel, about the terror and exhilaration of publishing something you'd pulled from your own chest. Emma told him about her favorite project, a rooftop garden in Capitol Hill that had become a sanctuary for people who needed quiet in the middle of chaos. Why landscape architecture? James asked as their main courses arrived. Emma cut into her salmon buying time. Control, she said finally. You can't control most things in life, but you can control how a space feels. You can design for peace, for growth. You can create places where things have room to breathe and become what they're meant to be. And the memorial garden, the one you couldn't draw today, she set down her fork. That's different. That's about honoring what's lost. And she paused. I don't know if I'm the right person for that, if I understand loss in the right way. James was quiet for a moment. I think, he said carefully, that there's no right way to understand loss. There's just living with it, learning to carry it without letting it crush you. Is that what you do with whatever you're carrying? He met her eyes. I'm trying to, not very successfully. What happened? Emma asked, then immediately backtracked. Sorry, you don't have to. 7 years ago, my girlfriend told me she was pregnant. The words came out flat, practiced, like he'd rehearsed them. I panicked, said terrible things, told her I wasn't ready, that it was a mistake, that... He stopped, took a breath. I left, in the middle of the night, like a coward. Emma waited. Around them, the restaurant hummed with other people's conversations, other people's lives. I sent money, James continued, for a while. Then Claire, my ex, she moved, changed her number. I could probably find her if I tried, but... He shook his head. I don't know if I have the right to show up now. Don't know if it would help or just make everything worse. Do you think about them? Emma asked quietly. The child, every day. James looked out the window at the dark water. There's a kid out there 7 years old now who exists because of choices I made and then ran away from. And I don't know their name. Don't know if they like dinosaurs or drawing or soccer. Don't know if they ask about me. That's a heavy thing to carry. Yeah. He turned back to her. Your turn. My turn. You showed me yours. Fair's fair. Emma took a sip of wine, then another. The alcohol was making everything slightly softer, slightly easier. Or maybe it was something else. Maybe it was the relief of talking to someone who didn't know her as the girl who had everything together. I can't have children, she said. Medical condition. Found out 5 years ago, right in the middle of my marriage. And I never told my husband. Not really. I made excuses, changed the subject, said maybe next year, until there weren't any next years left. Why didn't you tell him? Because I thought, Emma's voice caught. I thought if I was just be perfect enough in other ways, it wouldn't matter. If I was the perfect wife, had the perfect home, supported his career perfectly, maybe he wouldn't notice the one thing I couldn't give him. Did he want kids? I don't know. We talked about it in abstract terms, but we never... She stopped. That's not true. I never let us talk about it concretely because I was terrified. And then one day he was just gone, moved out while I was at work, left a note. James reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of hers. Not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his hand. Can I say something that might be overstepping? He asked. Go ahead. I don't think your marriage ended because you can't have kids. I think it ended because you spent years hiding a fundamental part of yourself. And maybe he was hiding too. Maybe you were both so busy trying to be perfect for each other that you forgot to be real. Emma felt something crack inside her chest, not break, crack, like ice at the start of spring. I'm going to need more wine, she said. James signaled the waiter. They ordered dessert, even though neither of them was particularly hungry anymore. Chocolate mousse for her, tiramisu for him. They shared both forks, crossing over the middle of the table in an intimate choreography. This is the weirdest first date I've ever been on, Emma said. It's not a date. Remember, we're at the wrong table. Right. What is it then? James considered. An accident, a mistake, a cow. Gift. They looked at each other. Something had shifted in the air between them, something neither of them wanted to name yet. At 10:30, the restaurant was starting to empty. The waiter brought the check. James reached for it, but Emma stopped him. Split it, she said. We're not. Right, split it. They divided the bill with careful precision, both of them suddenly aware that the evening was ending. That reality was waiting outside in the rain. At the coat check, as they gathered their things, James said, I should probably text Tom, let him know what happened. I should tell Rachel, too. They stood in the restaurant lobby, putting off the inevitable. Through the glass doors, the rain had softened to a mist. The city lights wavered in the wet air. Emma, James said. Yeah, can I? He pulled out his phone, hesitated. This is going to sound presumptuous, but can I get your number? This isn't me trying to. Just because it's a good story, Emma suggested. Yeah, exactly, a good story. She took his phone, entered her number, handed it back. Their fingers brushed and she felt that crackle again. Not attraction exactly, but something deeper. Recognition. I had a nice time at the wrong table, James said. Me too. They walked outside into the mist. The city smelled like wet pavement and distant ocean. Emma's car was in one direction, James's apartment in another. They stood at the intersection of those two paths, neither quite ready to move. I'm sorry about your marriage, James said, and about everything you're carrying. I'm sorry about your kid, about the regret. Maybe we're both just works in progress. Maybe that's okay. Emma wanted to say something else, wanted to explain that this evening had felt like breathing after being underwater, that for 3 hours she'd forgotten to be perfect and had just been. But the words wouldn't come, so instead she said, Good night, James. Good night, Emma. She walked to her car, aware that he was watching her go. She didn't look back. If she looked back, she might do something foolish, might suggest coffee or another accidental dinner, or any number of things that would complicate the careful structure she'd built around her life. It wasn't until she was halfway home that she realized she was smiling. The next morning, Emma woke to rain against her windows and a text message from Rachel. What happened? Marcus said you never showed up at his table. Call me immediately. Emma stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she typed, wrong table, long story, I'll call you later. She set down the phone, made coffee, and stood at her apartment window watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, James was probably doing the same thing. Two people who'd found each other by accident, carrying secrets they'd shared with a stranger, but not with the people who were supposed to know them. Her laptop was open on her kitchen table. The memorial garden design was due in a week, and she'd been stalling for 3. She sat down, pulled up the blank file, and for the first time in months, her hand didn't shake when she picked up her stylus. She drew a single line, then another. A path winding through trees, a space for quiet, a place where loss could exist alongside beauty. She worked for 3 hours straight until her coffee went cold and the rain stopped and the city outside her window had fully awakened. When she finally leaned back, there was a sketch on her screen. Rough, imperfect, but real. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hey, it's James, from the wrong table. Just wanted to say I got some writing done this morning. First time in weeks, so thanks, I guess, for the accidental inspiration. Emma looked at her sketch, then back at the message. She typed, same, drew something, might actually be good. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Coffee sometime, just as fellow accidental humans. No expectations. Emma should have said no, should have remembered all the reasons she'd built walls, all the ways she'd learned to be careful. Should have thought about Marcus still waiting at table 21, stable and safe and right on paper. Instead, she typed, Wednesday, 2 p.m., that place on Pike Street. It's a non-date. Completely accidental. See you there. Emma set down her phone and returned to her sketch. Outside, the clouds were breaking apart, letting through ribbons of pale light. Somewhere across town, James was probably staring at his laptop screen, watching a cursor blink on a page that was no longer blank. Neither of them knew yet what they'd started. Neither of them could see how this accidental meeting would reshape everything they thought they knew about themselves. But for now, in this moment, it was enough to have drawn a line, to have written a word, to have taken one small step away from the safety of perfection toward the risk of being real. Emma saved her work, titled the file Memorial Garden Draft 1, and allowed herself to hope. It was still raining in Seattle, but for the first time in months, she didn't mind. Wednesday arrived wrapped in fog. the kind that settled over Puget Sound like a blanket muffling the city's edges until everything felt softened, uncertain. Emma stood outside the coffee shop on Pike Street 3 minutes early, watching condensation run down the window. Through the glass, she could see the interior exposed brick, mismatched furniture, string lights that had been left up long after the holidays ended. A barista with purple hair was drawing something elaborate in foam. Two students hunched over laptops in the corner. It looked warm, safe, ordinary. She almost turned around. Then she saw James walking up the street, hands in his jacket pockets, same slightly disheveled look as Saturday night. He hadn't seen her yet. She watched him navigate the sidewalk, stepping over a puddle, nearly colliding with someone coming the other way. When he looked up and spotted her, his whole face changed. Surprise becoming recognition, becoming something that looked almost like relief. "You came," he said. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought there was a 50-50 chance you'd realize this was a terrible idea and delete my number." Emma smiled. "I thought about it. Around 2 a.m. Monday morning." "What stopped you?" "Curiosity." She pulled open this coffee shop door. "And the fact that I drew 3 pages of Garden Design Sunday. First productive work I've done in weeks." Inside, the shop smelled like espresso and cinnamon. They ordered cappuccino for her black coffee for him and found a table near the back, away from the window. Emma noticed James choosing the chair that faced the wall, not the door. He saw her noticing. "Bad habit from too much time alone," he said. "I forget how to be around people." "I get that. After David left, I went 3 weeks without having a conversation that wasn't about work." "What changed?" "Rachel, she literally showed up at my apartment with Thai food and refused to leave until I ate something and admitted I was not fine." Their drinks arrived. Emma wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to hold. "Tell me about Rachel," James said. So Emma did. She told him about their college friendship, about Rachel's gift for capturing light, about how she could make people look like their best selves in photographs. She told him about the accident 5 years ago. Rachel's younger sister Lily, only 19, gone in an instant when someone ran a red light. How Rachel had survived with minor injuries but major guilt. How she'd thrown herself into wedding photography afterwards, surrounding herself with joy as a kind of penance. "She understands loss," Emma said. "Real loss. Not like me, who's just, don't do that." "Do what?" "Minimize your own pain because someone else's seems bigger." James leaned forward slightly. "Loss isn't a competition. Grief doesn't work on a scale." Emma looked at him, really looked. There were shadows under his eyes, the kind that came from too many late nights staring at screens. But his eyes themselves were clear, focused, present in a way that felt rare. "Tell me about Tom," she said. James's expression softened. "Tom's the reason I didn't completely fall apart after Claire. We met in college, both English majors, both convinced we'd be the next great American novelists. He married his high school sweetheart, Sarah. They had a daughter, Mia. She's 6 now." "You said had." "Sarah died 3 years ago. Breast cancer. Tom's been raising Mia alone ever since." James traced the rim of his coffee cup. "He's the bravest person I know. Every day he gets up and makes breakfast and braids hair and goes to work and reads bedtime stories. He doesn't run away, he just stays. Unlike you." It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. James didn't flinch. "Yeah, unlike me." They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop hummed around them, the hiss of the espresso machine, someone's laughter, the gentle background music that was probably supposed to be soothing, but just made everything feel slightly melancholic. "I have a confession," Emma said. "I Googled you." James raised his eyebrows. "Did you? Your book was really good. The Distance Between. I read it Monday night, all of it." He looked genuinely surprised. "You read the whole thing in one night?" "Couldn't stop. The way you write about loneliness, it's not sad exactly. It's more like honest, like you're saying all the things people think but don't admit." "What did you think of the ending?" Emma considered. "I think the protagonist made the wrong choice, walking away instead of fighting. But I also think that's what makes it feel true. People don't always make the brave choice." "No," James said quietly, "they don't." "Have you written anything since?" "Nothing worth reading. But you're trying, I'm failing productively." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. My publisher keeps asking for pages. My agent sends increasingly urgent emails. And I keep opening the file and staring at it like, if I wait long enough, the words will just appear. What's stopping you? James was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, fog was lifting slightly, revealing patches of gray sky. Fear, he said finally. The first book came easy. It poured out of me. But now there's this voice that says, what if it was a fluke? What if I only had one story in me? What if I try to write something true and it's just empty? Emma understood that fear. The fear of reaching for something and finding nothing there. The fear of being exposed as not enough. Can I tell you something? She said. Sunday when I was drawing, I kept thinking about what you said at dinner, about there being no right way to understand loss. And I realized I've been trying to design this memorial garden from outside the grief. Like if I'm professional enough, detached enough, I can create something meaningful without actually feeling anything. And now I think maybe I need to feel it, all of it, even the parts that hurt. James reached across the table. This time his fingers did touch hers just barely. The contact was electric and grounding all at once. I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for, he said. Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. It's my client, the Memorial Garden Project. She's asking if I can meet today. You should go. I should. But Emma didn't move. James, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever think about trying to find your ex and the child? The question hung in the air between them. James pulled his hand back, wrapped it around his coffee cup. Every day, he said. But what would I even say? Sorry I abandoned you, but I've thought about you sometimes while living my comfortable life. What right do I have to show up now and disrupt whatever peace they've found? Maybe it's not about having the right. Maybe it's about taking responsibility. Or maybe it's about knowing when the damage you've done means the kindest thing is to stay away. Emma wanted to argue to tell him that running was never the answer. But who was she to talk? She'd spent 5 years running from one difficult conversation with her husband, and look where that had gotten her. I should go, she said, standing. My client's expecting me. James stood too. They walked outside together, back into the fog that had only partially lifted. The city felt suspended, caught between weather systems. Emma, James said, yeah. Can we do this again? The accidental coffee thing. She smiled. I think we probably shouldn't. But yes, I'd like that. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to leave. Finally, Emma turned and walked toward where she'd parked her car. This time she did look back. James was still standing there, watching her go, hands in his pockets, looking lost and found at the same time. Mrs. Eleanor Delacroix lived in a Victorian house in Queen Anne, the kind of place that suggested old money handled with quiet grace. Emma rang the doorbell and heard footsteps slow but steady. The woman who answered was in her late 60s, silver hair pulled back in an elegant twist, wearing a cardigan that probably cost more than Emma's entire outfit. But her eyes were kind, and when she smiled, it was genuine. You must be Emma. Please come in. The interior was exactly what Emma expected: hardwood floors, antique furniture walls covered in photographs. But it was the photographs that made Emma pause. Most of them showed a young girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old, with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile. My granddaughter Sophie, Mrs. Delacroix said softly. She passed 2 years ago, leukemia. I'm so sorry. Thank you, dear. Mrs. Delacroix led her to a sunroom at the back of the house. Please sit. Would you like tea? They settled into wicker chairs surrounded by plants. Mrs. Delacroix poured Earl Grey from a porcelain pot, the ritual giving them both a moment to adjust to each other's presence. I've seen your work, Mrs. Delacroix said. The rooftop garden in Capitol Hill. I go there sometimes to read. It's peaceful. That was one of my favorite projects. I can tell there's love in the design, intention. She set down her teacup. That's what I want for this garden. Not just a memorial, but a place that holds space for joy alongside grief. Sophie loved butterflies and lavender. She loved the way light moved through leaves. Emma pulled out her tablet, opened the file with her initial sketches. I've been thinking about creating a circular path. Not a maze exactly, but a journey. Different spaces for different needs, sitting, walking, remembering. Mrs. Delacroix studied the sketches carefully. This is beautiful, Emma. But may I ask, do you have children? The question hit Emma like cold water. No, I don't. I didn't mean to pry. It's just designing for lost children. When you haven't experienced that particular heartbreak, it must be challenging. Emma could have left it there, could have given a professional answer about research and empathy and design theory. Instead, she found herself saying, I can't have children, Miss Delacroix, medical condition, and I think that's why this project terrifies me, because I'm grieving something I never had, and that feels complicated, Miss Delacroix finished. Different from my grief, but no less real. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this project. On the contrary. The older woman reached over and patted Emma's hand. I think you are exactly right. You understand that loss takes many forms. That grief isn't always about death. Sometimes it's about futures that won't happen. Children who won't exist, lives that take different shapes than we imagined. Emma felt tears prickling her eyes. She blinked them back. Sophie used to say that gardens were time machines. Mrs. Delacroix continued. She said when you plant something, you're sending a message to your future self. I was here, I hoped, I believed something beautiful would grow. She smiled sadly. I think she was wise beyond her years. They spent the next 2 hours going over designs, discussing materials and plants, and how light would move through the space during different seasons. Mrs. Delacroix had strong opinions, but expressed them gently, always asking Emma's thoughts, always listening. As Emma was packing up to leave, Mrs. Delacroix said, That young man you mentioned at coffee earlier, the one you met by accident, are you seeing him again? Emma blinked. I didn't mention. You have that look. The one we get when someone unexpected shifts our center of gravity. Mrs. Delacroix walked her to the door. Don't be too careful, Emma. I've lived long enough to know that the safe choice and the right choice aren't always the same thing. Driving home, Emma thought about safety, about all the ways she'd chosen it over risk control, over uncertainty, about how David had been safe on paper, stable job, clear timeline, predictable future, and how they'd still ended up broken. Her phone rang. Rachel's name appeared on her car's display. Tell me everything, Rachel said the moment Emma answered. You went to the blind date, disappeared, didn't meet Marcus, and now you're being mysterious. What happened? Emma navigated through afternoon traffic trying to figure out where to start. I met someone. Marcus, no, someone else. Someone at the wrong table. She told Rachel the whole story, the mistaken identity, the dinner conversation, the coffee date that morning. Rachel listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. Emma, Rachel said when she finished, this is either the most romantic thing I've ever heard, or you're about to get your heart broken. Probably both. What does he do, this James? He's a writer, published one novel, working on another. Sort of. So he's broken, blocked. Great. Rach, I'm sorry, that was unfair. I set you up with Marcus because he's stable, because I wanted you to be with someone safe after everything with David. I know, and I love you for it, but maybe I need something other than safe right now. Rachel was quiet for a moment. You know what maybe you do? God knows I've made my share of impulsive decisions. At least yours involves mutual emotional damage instead of just your own. That's your blessing. That's my blessing. But Emma, be careful. You're still healing. Don't mistake intensity for compatibility. After they hung up, Emma thought about that distinction. Intensity versus compatibility. She and David had been compatible on paper, similar backgrounds, aligned goals, complementary lifestyles. But there'd been no intensity, no crackle of recognition, no sense that they were seeing each other's actual selves. With James, everything felt reversed. All intensity, uncertain compatibility. All risk, unclear reward. She was still thinking about it that evening when her phone buzzed. James' question, hypothetical. If someone were to invite you to something weird, impossibly uncomfortable, would you A, say yes, B, politely decline, or C, assume they're a serial killer? Emma smiled at her phone. Emma, depends on the level of weird. James, Tom's having a thing Saturday. Mia's birthday party. 6-year-old's cake, probably a lot of screaming. He asked if I wanted to bring someone. I said I didn't know anyone who'd voluntarily subject themselves to that. Was I wrong? Emma stared at the message. A 6-year-old's birthday party. With Tom, who was raising his daughter alone. With James, who was terrified of fatherhood. This was about as far from a safe second date as possible. She typed what time 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. James, really, Emma, I like cake. And chaos. What time, James, 2 p.m., Tom's place in Ballard. Fair warning, there will be face painting and a bounce house. It's going to be aggressively cheerful. Emma, I'll bring sunglasses. James, you're either very brave or very foolish. Emma, probably both, like someone else I know. Saturday dawned clear and bright, the kind of rare Seattle day that made tourists believe the weather reputation was exaggerated. Emma stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes trying to decide what one wears to a child's birthday party with a man who was definitely not her boyfriend. She settled on jeans and a soft green sweater. Casual but not trying too hard casual. She bought a present, an art kit with watercolors and good paper, and showed up at Tom's house at exactly 2 p.m. The bounce house was already inflated in the front yard, pink and purple, and enormous. Children's laughter spilled out the front door, along with the smell of pizza and something sweet. James met her at the gate. He was wearing jeans and a faded band t-shirt, hair slightly messy, smile slightly nervous. You came, he said. You keep saying that like you're surprised. I am, every time. Inside the house was controlled chaos. A dozen 6-year-olds ran in various directions while parents clustered in the kitchen, that universal look of exhausted supervision on their faces. In the middle of it all was Tom, tall, broad-shouldered, with laugh lines around his eyes, and a daughter's hair clip forgotten in his own hair. James. He pulled James into a hug, then turned to Emma. And you must be Emma. The wrong table. Emma laughed. He told you. He told me everything, including the part where you actually read his book. In one night, that officially makes you either a saint or a masochist. Both, Emma said. A small girl appeared at Tom's side, all dark curls and missing front tooth. Daddy Chloe says she can do a handstand, but I don't believe her. Then I guess we need to see proof. Mia, this is Uncle James's friend Emma. Mia looked up at Emma with serious brown eyes. Are you his girlfriend? Mia, Tom started. No, Emma said gently. We're friends. Oh, Mia seemed satisfied with this. Do you want to see the bounce house? Before Emma could answer, Mia had grabbed her hand and was pulling her toward the backyard. Emma glanced back at James, who looked equal parts amused and terrified. The next 2 hours were a blur of children and cake and face paint. Emma found herself drawn into games she barely understood. Rules that seemed to change by the minute, conversations that jumped from dinosaurs to favorite colors to why the sky is blue. Mia appointed herself Emma's guide, explaining the social hierarchy of first grade and the complicated politics of playground equipment. Do you have kids? Mia asked at one point, the two of them sitting on the edge of the bounce house catching their breath. No, sweetie, I don't. Why not? The question was innocent, without agenda. Emma looked across the yard to where James was helping Tom light birthday candles. Sometimes things don't work out the way we plan, Emma said. But that's okay. There are lots of ways to have people in your life who matter. Mia considered this with 6-year-old solemnity. I don't have a mommy anymore, but I have Daddy and Uncle James and Grandma and Mr. Whiskers. Mr. Whiskers, my cat, he's orange and he snores. Emma smiled. He sounds perfect. He is. Mia stood up. Come on, they're doing cake. The birthday song was off-key and enthusiastic. Mia blew out her candles with her eyes squeezed shut, clearly taking her wish seriously. Parents started the slow process of collecting their sugar-high children and making excuses to leave. Emma helped clean up plates in the trash, wrapping paper, and recycling leftover pizza in containers. Tom caught her in the kitchen. Thank you for coming, he said. It meant a lot to James. He doesn't usually bring people around. I'm not sure what we are yet. You're whatever you need to be. Just be patient with him. He's carrying a lot of guilt about things he can't change. We all are, Emma said. After most guests had left, the 4 of them, Tom, Mia, James, and Emma, sat in the backyard watching the sun sink toward the Olympics. Mia was sprawled in Tom's lap, clearly crashing from the party high. Tell a story, Uncle James, Mia mumbled. I don't know any good ones. Tell about the princess who couldn't find her castle. James glanced at Emma, something unreadable in his expression. Once upon a time, he began. There was a princess who was looking for her castle. She had a map and a plan, and she knew exactly what the castle should look like. But every time she thought she'd found it, it turned out to be something else. A library, a garden, a coffee shop. Emma felt her breath catch. Was she sad? Mia asked sleepily. At first, but then she realized something. Maybe she wasn't looking for a castle at all. Maybe she was looking for home. And home isn't a place with walls and towers. James paused, met Emma's eyes. It's wherever you feel like yourself, where you don't have to pretend. Did she find it? I don't know yet. The story isn't finished. Mia was asleep by the end and Tom carried her inside. Emma and James stayed in the backyard, sitting on the edge of the deck, their shoulders almost touching. That was a good party, Emma said. You're good with kids. I like them. They're honest. No pretense. James was quiet for a moment. Does it hurt being around them? Emma thought about lying, thought about giving the easy answer. Instead, she said, yes, but not in a bad way. More like it hurts the same way beauty hurts sometimes. Because you want to hold on to it, and you know you can't. I'm sorry you can't have children. I'm sorry you ran from yours. They sat with that for a while. The sky was turning pink and gold, the kind of sunset that made Seattle feel like magic. Somewhere in the neighborhood, someone was playing guitar. A dog barked. Life continued its small, ordinary miracles. James, Emma said. Yeah. Tell me what really happened, with Claire and the baby, all of it. He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he started talking, words coming slow at first, then faster. We'd been together 6 months. I was 27 working on my first book, convinced I was going to be the next literary genius. Claire was a teacher, patient and kind, and so much better than me in every way. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. Not just normal panic, complete existential terror. I said terrible things, that I wasn't ready, that it would ruin everything, that his voice broke. I suggested she get rid of it. And when she said no, that she was keeping the baby regardless, I left. Packed a bag in the middle of the night and drove to Portland. Crashed on a friend's couch for 3 weeks until I'd convinced myself I'd done the right thing. Did you ever talk to her again? Twice. I sent money for a while. Child support even though she never asked. Then she moved, changed her number. I could probably track her down if I tried, but... He shook his head. What would I even say? Emma took his hand. You could say you're sorry. You could say you were scared and you made the worst possible choice. You could ask if there's any way to make amends. It's been 7 years. So does time erase responsibility? No, but it makes showing up feel selfish, like I'm doing it for me, not for them. Maybe you are. Maybe that's okay. Maybe taking responsibility is always partly selfish because it's about becoming someone you can live with. James looked at her. In the fading light, his face was all planes and shadows, vulnerability, written in every line. You're kind of wise, you know that. I'm kind of a mess. I just hide it better than you do. He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. We're quite a pair. The worst blind date ever. The best mistake. Emma stood, pulling James up with her. Walk me to my car. They moved through Tom's house, quietly, not wanting to wake Mia. Tom was in the kitchen doing dishes, and he waved them off when they tried to help. Outside, the street was quiet. Emma's car was parked 3 houses down under a maple tree, just starting to show autumn colors. They walked slowly, neither ready for the day to end. Emma, James said when they reached her car, can I? But whatever he was going to ask got lost because Emma was already turning toward him, and he was already leaning down, and then they were kissing. It wasn't like the movies. It was better. Uncertain and urgent and gentle all at once. James's hand came up to cup her face, and Emma's fingers twisted in his shirt, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to this, to the taste of birthday cake and coffee, to the warmth of another person seeing you clearly and choosing to stay anyway. When they pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. I should go, Emma whispered. You should. Neither of them moved. James, I'm scared. Me too. I don't know how to do this, how to be with someone when I'm still broken. Maybe we're both broken in ways that fit together. Emma laughed, but it came out shaky. That's the worst romantic sentiment I've ever heard. I'm a writer. Poetry's not my strong suit. She kissed him again, softer this time. Then she got in her car and drove away, watching him disappear in her rearview mirror, standing under the maple tree, hands in his pockets, looking like someone who just found something he didn't know he was looking for. The next week passed in a blur of texts and phone calls and stolen moments. James came to Emma's office one afternoon and sat quietly while she worked, occasionally offering thoughts on the memorial garden design. Emma showed up at a reading James was attending at Elliott Bay Book Company, watching him ask smart questions during the Q&A. They were careful not to label it, not to push too hard or ask for too much, but every conversation went deeper. Every touch lasted longer, and Emma could feel something shifting inside her walls, coming down, defenses relaxing. On Thursday evening, they met at Discovery Park and walked the loop trail as the sun set over the Sound. The path wound through meadows and forest, emerging occasionally at cliff edges with views across the water to the Olympics. Tell me something you have never told anyone, James said. They'd stopped at a viewpoint, leaning against the railing, watching sailboats drift across the blue-gray water. Emma took a breath. The day David left, I was relieved. I came home to the note in the empty closet and the keys on the counter, and my first thought was, finally. Not sadness, not shock, just relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. That doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't it? I spent 8 years with someone I didn't really love. Or maybe I loved him, but I was never in love with him. And I let him believe that you were happy, that you were trying, that the problem was something fixable. James turned to face her. Emma, you were protecting yourself. Maybe not in the healthiest way, but we all do what we need to survive. Is that what you were doing when you left Claire surviving? I was running. There's a difference. Is there? James was quiet for a long moment. Gulls cried overhead, their calls lonely and somehow perfect for the moment. Yes, he said finally. You stayed and tried, even if you were trying at the wrong things. I just disappeared. I gave up before I even started. Emma reached for his hand. You're not that person anymore. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you showed up at a 6-year-old's birthday party even though it terrified you. Because you're asking hard questions instead of running from them. Maybe I'm just running toward you instead of away from everything else. Maybe that's still progress. They kissed again there at the cliff edge with the wind picking up and the sky turning violet. Emma felt like she was standing at the edge of more than just a precipice. She was standing on the edge of something that could break her open completely, and for the first time in years, she wanted to jump. When they pulled apart, James said, I need to tell you something. Emma's stomach dropped. Okay. I've been thinking about what you said, about finding Claire and the baby, about taking responsibility. And I think I need to try, not because I can fix anything I know I can't, but because you're right, I need to become someone I can live with. Emma felt something painful and hopeful twist in her chest. That's brave. That's terrifying. Both can be true. They walked back to their cars in the gathering darkness, hands linked, neither speaking, but both thinking hard about all the ways the past never really leaves us, just waits for us to be strong enough to face it. At Emma's car, James said, will you wait for me while I figure this out? I'm not going anywhere, but if I leave, if I have to go to Portland or wherever Claire is. Emma put her finger on his lips. We're both broken, remember? In ways that fit together. I can wait while you glue some pieces back. What if I come back different? What if you come back whole? James kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. Then he stepped back. I'm falling in love with you, he said. That's probably the wrong thing to say right now, but I wanted you to know before I go chasing ghosts. Emma felt tears prickling her eyes. That's definitely the wrong thing to say. Should I take it back? No, but don't expect me to say it back, not yet. Why not? Because I need to know you come back for you, not for me. I need to know you can face your past without me being your escape route. James nodded slowly. That's fair. Terrifying, but fair. Go find them, make your amends. Then come back and we'll figure out what this is. What if... James, stop. Just go do what you need to do. They stood in the parking lot for another few minutes, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Finally, Emma got in her car. She watched watched him sit behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine. She drove home through streets that felt different now, sharper, more alive. Everything hurt more, but it also felt more real. Like she'd been living in black and white, and suddenly the world had color again. At home, she poured herself wine and stood at her window, watching the city lights. Her phone buzzed. James, thank you for seeing me, really seeing me. Not many people do that. Emma, thank you for letting me. James, I'll call you tomorrow. Emma, you better. She set down her phone and pulled up the memorial garden design on her laptop. Mrs. Delacroix had approved the preliminary sketches, and now Emma was working on the detailed plans. She added a butterfly garden near the center, a lavender grove along the east edge, a path that spiraled inward to a quiet sitting area. She worked until midnight, until her eyes burned and her hand cramped. When she finally stopped, she had something real, a design that held space for loss without being consumed by it. A place where grief and beauty could coexist, just like her heart was learning to do. She fell asleep on her couch laptop, still open beside her, dreaming of gardens and butterflies and a man with sad eyes who was learning to be brave. 3 days after their conversation at Discovery Park, James called Emma from a coffee shop in Portland. I found her, he said without preamble. His voice was tight, stretched thin over something that might have been fear or relief or both. Claire, she's here, still in Portland. She's a principal now at an elementary school in Selwood. Emma set down her pencil. She'd been working on the memorial garden, finalizing the placement of benches, but suddenly the lines on her screen seemed less important than the sound of James's breathing on the other end of the phone. Have you talked to her? Not yet. I've been sitting outside her school for 2 hours like a creep trying to work up the courage. A bitter laugh. I'm 34 years old and I'm too scared to walk through a door. You're not scared. You're being careful. There's a difference. Is there? Emma heard traffic in the background, the distant sound of children playing. She imagined James in his car knuckles, white on the steering wheel, watching a building that held his entire past. James, she said gently, what's the worst thing that could happen? She tells me to leave, that I have no right to be here, that I ruined her life, and she spent 7 years putting it back together, and I'm about to shatter it again. And the best thing, oh, silence. Then quietly, she lets me apologize. She lets me meet my child. She gives me a chance to be, not a father, I know I lost that, right? But maybe something, an uncle, friend, someone who shows up. Then that's what you ask for. Not forgiveness, not redemption, just the chance to show up. After they hung up, Emma sat in her office for a long time staring at nothing. Outside, the city was having one of its perfect October days. Crisp air leaves turning gold, that particular slant of light that made everything look like a painting. Her phone buzzed. An email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, Opportunity Senior Design Position. Emma almost deleted it. She got recruitment emails constantly, but something made her open it. Dear Ms. Hart, I'm reaching out on behalf of Sterling and Associates, Boston's premier landscape architecture firm. We've been following your work, particularly your public space designs and your innovative approach to memorial gardens. We're expanding our team and would love to discuss a senior design position with us. This would be a significant step up leading projects rather than supporting them working with major institutions, a compensation package that reflects your expertise. I know it's a big ask to consider relocating, but we believe you're exactly the caliber of designer we need. Would you be open to a conversation? Emma read the email 3 times. Boston, across the country. Everything she'd worked toward during her marriage to David, recognition, advancement, the kind of position that meant she'd made it. It was also 3,000 miles from James, from Rachel, from the memorial garden she was building with Mrs. Delacroix, from the life she was just starting to rebuild. She closed the email without responding and returned to her designs. That evening, Rachel showed up at Emma's apartment with Thai food and that expression that meant she wasn't leaving until they'd talked. Spill, Rachel said, unpacking containers onto Emma's kitchen counter. You've been weird all week. Good weird, but weird. Emma poured them both wine. James went to Portland to find his ex and their child. Rachel's hands stilled on the pad thai container. Wow, that's wow. How do you feel about that? Terrified, proud, completely uncertain about what happens next. Do you love him? The question hung in the air between them. Emma took a long sip of wine before answering. I don't know, maybe. It's been 3 weeks, Rach. That's insane. Love doesn't follow timelines. Rachel served them both generous portions. When I met Marcus at the coffee shop and apologized for the blind date mix-up, you want to know what he said? He said you'd found something real, even if it was accidental, that sometimes the universe knows better than we do. Marcus sounds wise. Marcus is boring as hell, but occasionally he says something profound. Rachel smiled. You know what I think? I think you and James found each other because you both stopped trying to be perfect. You stopped pretending you had it all together. That's rare, Em. That's worth fighting for. What if he comes back and realizes he doesn't want this? What if facing his past changes everything? What if it does? You can't control that. You can only decide who you want to be in the meantime. After Rachel left, Emma pulled up the email from Boston again. She read it slowly this time, really reading it. They were offering her a dream validation success, a fresh start in a city where no one knew her as David's ex-wife or the woman who couldn't have children. She could run towards something instead of away from something. That felt different, better. She drafted a response. Thank you for reaching out. I'd be interested in learning more. Could we schedule a call? Her finger hovered over the send button. She thought about James in Portland, confronting his past. She thought about the memorial garden half finished. She thought about Mrs. Delacroix and Rachel and Tom and Mia, all the people who'd become part of her life in this city. She hit send. James called her 2 days later. This time his voice was different, raw, exhausted, but somehow lighter. I met her, he said, Claire. We talked for 3 hours. Emma was in Mrs. Delacroix's garden finalizing measurements for the lavender grove. She excused herself and walked to a quiet corner. Tell me. She's amazing, Emma. She built this whole life. She's engaged to a good man, Thomas, who's been there for her and for, his voice caught, for our daughter. Her name is Lily. She's 7.5. She has Claire's eyes and my stubborn chin, and she loves soccer and reading, and she wants to be a veterinarian. Emma felt tears prickling. Did you meet her? From a distance. Claire showed me pictures, first told me about her. She said she's not ready for me to meet Lily yet. That Lily knows she has a birth father who isn't in the picture, but she doesn't know I abandoned them. She thinks I left for noble reasons, that I was too young and couldn't be there. That's generous of Claire. It's more than I deserve. James took a shaky breath. But she's willing to let me try, not as a father Thomas is her father in every way that matters, but maybe as someone who exists in her life. Maybe eventually as someone she knows cares about her. That's incredible. Claire said something that gutted me. She said, I was angry for a long time, but then I realized you gave Lily life, and that's not nothing. Even if you gave nothing else, you gave her that. And Emma, I didn't know what to say. How do you thank someone for being better than you in every possible way? You show up. You keep showing up. You prove that you can be someone she was right to give a second chance to. That's going to take time. Good things do. They were quiet for a moment. Emma could hear Portland traffic through the phone, could almost see James wherever he was, probably pacing, running his hand through his hair, the way he did when he was overwhelmed. I'm staying here for a while, James said. There's an Airbnb near Claire's place. She said I could come to Lily's soccer game next week, stand at a distance, just be there. Start building a presence before we figure out the next step. How long is a while? I don't know, a few weeks, a month, however long it takes. Emma felt something crack in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. That's the right thing to do. Emma, no, don't. You need to do this without worrying about me, without rushing because you think I'm waiting. But you are waiting. I said, I'm not going anywhere. That's still true. But James, you need to do this for you. Not for us. Not to become someone worthy of a relationship. Just to become someone you can look at in the mirror. What if that takes longer than you want to wait? Emma closed her eyes. Thought about the Boston email sitting in her inbox, the follow-up call scheduled for tomorrow. Thought about all the ways the universe was offering them both chances to become different people. Then it takes longer, she said. After they hung up, Emma stood in Mrs. Delacroix's garden for a long time. The sun was setting, casting everything in amber light. The space was taking shape, the circular path, the butterfly garden, the lavender that would bloom in spring. It was becoming a place that held space for loss without being consumed by it, like she was learning to do. The call with Boston went well, too well. They offered her the position with a salary that made her catch her breath, a relocation package, a start date in January. They gave her 2 weeks to decide. Emma told no one, not Rachel, not her boss, not Mrs. Delacroix, especially not James. She threw herself into the memorial garden. The project was scheduled to be completed by early December with a small dedication ceremony around the holidays. Emma worked 12-hour days, obsessing over every detail. The precise placement of stones, the angle of benches, the way light would move through the space during different seasons. Mrs. Delacroix noticed. "You're running," the older woman said one afternoon, bringing Emma tea while she supervised the planting of the lavender. "I'm working." "You're hiding in work. There's a difference." Mrs. Delacroix settled onto one of the newly installed benches. "I did the same thing after Sophie died. Threw myself into foundation work, charity boards, anything to avoid sitting still long enough to feel the grief. What changed? I got too tired to run. Grief caught up with me in a hotel room in San Francisco during a fundraising gala. I had a complete breakdown in formal wear while a string quartet played downstairs." She smiled at the memory. "Not my finest moment, but maybe my most honest one." Emma sat down beside her. Around them, workers were installing the irrigation system, preparing the soil, beginning the transformation from plan to reality. "I got offered a job in Boston," Emma said. "Dream position. Everything I've worked for." "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. It feels like running, but it also feels like maybe I've outgrown Seattle. Like I came here for David's job, built a life around his career, and now I have a chance to build something that's truly mine." "Those can both be true." Mrs. Delacroix poured them both tea from her thermos. "Running towards something you want isn't the same as running away from something you fear. The question is, which one is this?" Emma didn't have an answer. That night, James called. They'd been talking every few days, careful conversations about his progress with Claire, about Lily's soccer games, about the novel he was starting to write again. They didn't talk about them, about what would happen when he came back. That felt too big, too uncertain. "I met her," James said. "Lily, officially." Emma's breath caught. "Tell me." "Claire arranged it at a park. She told Lily I was an old friend who wanted to say hello. We played on the swings for 20 minutes. She told me about her loose tooth and her favorite book and how she wants a puppy, but her mom says they're too much work." His voice was thick with emotion. "Emma," she smiled at me. This beautiful gap-toothed smile, and for a moment I saw Claire and I saw myself and I saw this whole person who exists because of choices I made 7 years ago. That must have been overwhelming, terrifying, humbling. I wanted to tell her who I was, but Claire says we have to go slow. Let Lily get comfortable with me as a person before we explain the connection. And she's right, but God, Emma, it's hard. Knowing and not being able to say it. You're doing it right. Being patient, earning trust. Claire said something yesterday. She said Thomas has been Lily's father in every way that matters, and that's not going to change. But she thinks there might be room for me too. Not as date, but as, I don't know, something. Someone who cares. Someone who shows up. That's more than you hope for. It's everything and nothing. James paused. "How are you? We always talk about me. Tell me about the garden, about your life." Emma wanted to tell him about Boston, wanted to lay out all her confusion and fear and uncertainty. Instead, she said, "The garden's beautiful. It's going to be exactly what Mrs. Delacroix hoped for. I wish I could see it. Maybe you will, when you come back." "When I come back," he echoed. But they both heard the question in it. When would that be? November arrived with rain and early darkness. The memorial garden was nearly complete. The paths laid, the plants establishing themselves, the benches and stone features in place. It looked raw, still unfinished, waiting for spring to bring everything to life. But the bones were good. The space held the right energy. Mrs. Delacroix scheduled the dedication ceremony for December 12th, Sophie's birthday. They'd invited family friends, some of Sophie's former classmates who were now teenagers. The mayor would say a few words. Emma would speak briefly about the design. Then they'd unveil the plaque and let people experience the space. Emma had 1 week to give Boston her answer. She stood in the garden on a gray Tuesday afternoon alone, except for the rain and her thoughts. The lavender was dormant, the butterfly garden, waiting for spring. But she could see what it would become, a place of transformation, of beauty emerging from grief. Her phone rang. Rachel. Emergency, Rachel said without preamble. I need you at my studio, now. What happened? Just come, please. 20 minutes later, Emma arrived at Rachel's photography studio in Fremont. Rachel met her at the door looking disheveled and slightly manic. Tell me I'm crazy, Rachel said, pulling Emma inside. The studio was covered in photographs, printed images tacked to every available surface. Wedding photos mostly, but also landscapes, street photography, portraits. Years of Rachel's work. I'm closing the studio, Rachel said. Emma stared at her. What? I can't keep photographing other people's happiness while pretending I have my own life figured out. I've been doing this for 5 years since Lily died, and I thought it was healing. Thought I was surrounding myself with joy. But I'm hiding behind other people's moments instead of creating my own. What are you going to do? I don't know. Travel maybe. Actually take photos for myself, not for clients. Figure out who I am when I'm not performing happiness. Rachel turned to Emma. You think I'm insane? I think you're brave. Says the woman who's considering running away to Boston. Emma froze. How did you? You left your laptop open at my place last week. I wasn't snooping, but I saw the email. And Em, I get it, I do. But you need to be honest about why you're going. I don't know why I'm going. Yes, you do. You're scared. James is in Portland dealing with his best and you're here alone dealing with yours, and Boston feels like a way to skip ahead to the part where you've moved on. That's not, isn't it? Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. You spent 8 years in a marriage where you hid yourself. You spent months after the divorce building walls. You met James, and for the first time in years, you let someone actually see you. And now he's gone, and you're scared that when he comes back, he won't want what he saw. Emma felt tears burning. What if he doesn't? What if he comes back different and realizes we were just two broken people having a moment and it meant more to me than it did to him? Then you hurt. Then you heal, then you keep going. But Emma, you don't get to decide for him, and you don't get to run away to Boston because you're scared of getting hurt. What if Boston is what I actually want? Then take it, but make sure you are choosing it, not defaulting to it, because it's safer than staying and risking your heart. They stood surrounded by photographs of other people's joy, two women trying to figure out how to build their own. I don't know how to be this brave, Emma said finally. Yes, you do. You've been doing it all along. You just didn't realize it. That night, Emma made a list. 2 columns, Boston and Seattle. Under Boston, career advancement, fresh start, distance from past, proving I can build something that's mine. Under Seattle, Rachel, Memorial Garden, Mrs. Delacroix, Tom and Mia, the life I'm building. James maybe. She stared at the list for an hour. Then she added one more item under Seattle. Me, the version who stopped running. She called the Boston firm the next morning. Thank you so much for this opportunity, she said. It's incredible, and I'm honored. But I need to decline. I'm building something here, and I need to see it through. After she hung up, Emma felt like she'd stepped off a cliff. No safety net, no backup plan, just trust that the ground would hold. She called Mrs. Delacroix. The garden's ready, Emma said. I know the ceremony's not until December, but it's ready. It's beautiful. Sophie would love it. Mrs. Delacroix was quiet for a moment. Then would you like to see it, Emma, with me, just the two of us before everyone else? They met that afternoon as the sun broke through clouds for the first time in days. The garden glowed, everything rendered in gold and amber light. Mrs. Delacroix walked the circular path, slowly touching plants, sitting on benches, experiencing the space Emma had created. At the center where the path spiraled inward to a quiet meditation area, Mrs. Delacroix stopped. Emma had planted a single cherry tree there, young, not yet flowering, but full of promise. In Japan, Emma said, cherry blossoms represent the beauty and brevity of life. They bloom brilliantly and fade quickly. I thought for Sophie, Mrs. Delacroix pulled Emma into a hug. It's perfect. All of it? Thank you for creating this. Thank you for trusting me with it. They sat together on the central bench, surrounded by sleeping lavender and dormant butterfly gardens beneath a tree that would bloom in spring. Two women who'd lost different things finding peace in the same space. I turned down Boston, Emma said. I'm staying. Because of the young man. Because of me. Because I want to be the person who stays and fights instead of the person who runs when things get hard. Mrs. Delacroix patted her hand. Sophie would have liked you. She always said the bravest thing was to stay soft even when the world tried to make you hard. Emma felt tears spilling. I miss him, James, and I don't even know what we are or if we'll be anything when he comes back. But I miss him. Then tell him. He needs to focus on his child, yes, but he also needs to know he has something to come back to, that someone's holding space for him while he does this hard work. That evening, Emma texted James, the garden's finished. I wish you could see it. I wish you were here. I'm not saying this to pressure you. I just wanted you to know I'm here. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready. Woofer, three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. James, I'm coming home. Emma stared at the phone. James, not because you said that, because I need to. I can't hide in Portland forever. I need to trust that I can do this be in Lily's life without physically living in the same city. Claire and I talked about it. We have a plan. I'll come down twice a month, FaceTime weekly. Thomas said, I'm welcome in their lives if I respect their boundaries. It's not perfect, but it's real. Emma, when? James, tomorrow. I'm driving up tomorrow. Can I see you, Emma? Yes. She went to bed that night, unable to sleep, mind racing through possibilities. What if he came back and everything felt different? What if the intensity of their 3 weeks together couldn't survive reality? What if she'd built this up into something it could never be? But underneath the anxiety was something else. Hope. Tentative, fragile, but real. James arrived in Seattle on a Wednesday afternoon 3 weeks before the garden dedication. He texted Emma from his apartment. I'm here, still unpacking. Can I see you tonight? They met at Discovery Park, where they'd walked before he left. The path was muddy from recent rain, but the sky was clear, stars beginning to appear as the sun set behind the Olympics. They saw each other from a distance and stopped. Neither moving, just looking. James was thinner, worn down in a way that suggested he'd been carrying heavy things, but his eyes were clear, present. Emma closed the distance first. She walked toward him and he met her halfway, and then they were holding each other in the middle of the trail, breathing each other in. Hi, James said into her hair. Hi. They walked without destination, hands linked, letting the silence settle between them. Finally, James spoke. I met my daughter, not just a hello, really met her. Claire told her who I am. That I'm her biological father that I left when she was born, but that I'm trying now, trying to be better. How did she react? She asked if I was going to leave again. James's voice cracked. And I had to tell her honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I'll always be strong enough to stay, but I promised I'd try, that I'd show up as much as she wanted me to. What did she say? She said okay, just okay, like it was that simple, like kids have this capacity for acceptance that we lose somewhere along the way. They reached a viewpoint overlooking the sound. Lights from ferries traced lines across dark water, and somewhere in the distance, a foghorn called. I wrote something, James said, while I was in Portland, not the novel I'm supposed to write, something else, something true. He pulled out his phone, pulled up a document. Can I read it to you? Please. He read in the fading light, and Emma listened to words about fatherhood and failure, and the slow work of redemption. About a man learning that you can't undo the past, but you can choose who you become next. It was raw and honest and beautiful in its brokenness. When he finished, Emma was crying. It's perfect, she whispered. It's a start. James put away his phone. Emma, I need to tell you something. These 3 weeks away, I did a lot of thinking. About us. About what we are. Emma's heart hammered. And I think we found each other at exactly the wrong time. We're both disasters. Both carrying more than we should. Both figuring out how to be whole people instead of broken ones, pretending. So this was a mistake. No, God, no. This was... He turned to face her fully. This was the best accident of my life. But Emma, I can't ask you to wait while I figure out how to be both the person Lily needs and the person I want to be for you. That's not fair. The life isn't fair. That's not a reason to walk away. I'm not walking away. I'm being honest. I'm going to Portland twice a month. I'm going to FaceTime a 7-year-old who doesn't quite trust me yet. I'm going to write this book about all my failures. And through all of that, I'm going to be terrified that I'm not enough. Not enough for Lily. Not enough for my career. Not enough for you. Emma took his face in her hands. You're never going to be enough if you keep measuring yourself against impossible standards. None of us are enough if that's the bar. We're just people doing our best, failing sometimes, trying again. I want to be with you, James said. I want to try this, but I need you to know it's going to be messy. I'm going to have hard days, days when I question everything, days when I'm not sure I can do any of this. Same. I'm going to have days when I'm convinced you're going to leave like David did. Days when I close up and push you away because it feels safer than staying open. So what do? We try anyway. We show up for each other even when it's hard. We don't expect perfection. We just expect honesty. James kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. They stood at the cliff edge as darkness fell, completely holding on to each other like anchors in a storm. I love you, Emma said. I know it's too soon and too intense and probably too reckless, but I love you. I love you too, have since the wrong table, probably before that in some cosmic way. That's terrible writing. I know, I'll work on it. They laughed and it felt like breathing. The next 3 weeks passed in a new kind of normal. James returned to his apartment, started a routine of writing in the mornings and spending evenings with Emma. They were careful with each other, learning how to navigate a real relationship instead of the intensity of their first 3 weeks. Some days were easy. They'd meet for lunch, walk through Pike Place Market, sit in comfortable silence, while Emma worked on designs and James wrote. Some days were hard. James would have a difficult call with Claire, or Emma would see a mother with a baby and feel the old grief wash over her, and they'd have to figure out how to hold space for each other's pain without trying to fix it. Tom and Mia became part of their rhythm. Sunday dinners at Tom's house, where Mia would monopolize Emma's attention and James would help with dishes, while Tom grilled him about Portland and Lily and how therapy was going, because of course James had started therapy. Rachel announced she was closing her studio at the end of the year and traveling to Southeast Asia. I need to remember how to see the world through my own lens, she said. Not as someone's wedding photographer, but as myself. And through it all, the memorial garden waited for its dedication. December 12th dawned cold and clear. Emma woke early, drove to the garden before anyone else arrived. The space looked different in winter light, stark, honest, beautiful in its dormancy. Come spring, it would explode with color. But even now, it held peace. Mrs. Delacroix arrived first, wrapped in an elegant coat carrying a single white rose. She would have been 12 today, the older woman said, starting middle school, probably complaining about homework and begging for a phone. Emma hugged her. The garden will remember her at every age, young and the person she would have become. Others began arriving, Sophie's family friends, former teachers, the mayor fulfilling his promise, Rachel camera in hand, documenting not for a client, but for memory. Tom and Mia, the little girl carrying flowers to place in the garden, and James standing at the edge of the gathering, looking uncertain about whether he belonged. Emma caught his eye, smiled. He smiled back. The ceremony was simple. The mayor spoke about loss and resilience. Mrs. Delacroix told stories about Sophie, funny, heartbreaking, real. Emma spoke briefly about the design philosophy, about creating spaces that honored both grief and growth. Then they unveiled the plaque, Sophie Delacroix Memorial Garden, a space for all seasons of the heart. 2013-2023. People wandered the paths, sat on benches, stood in quiet corners. Emma watched them, experience the space, saw how it held them gently. This was what she'd been trying to create, not a monument to death, but a celebration of life and the love that outlives it. James found her near the cherry tree. It's beautiful, he said. You created something that matters. We created it. You helped. Those late-night conversations about flow and intention, that was you too. I mostly just listened. That was enough. They stood together beneath the cherry tree that would bloom in spring. Around them, people moved through the space, finding their own meanings, their own peace. Lily asked about you, James said quietly. She wanted to know if you were my girlfriend. What did you say? I said you were someone very important to me, someone I'm learning how to love better. He turned to her. Was that okay? It was perfect, Adon. Mrs. Delacroix approached them, smile bright despite the tears on her cheeks. Thank you both, she said, for giving Sophie a place to live on, for understanding that love doesn't end, it just changes shape. After most people had left, after the mayor's car had disappeared and the family had gathered the flowers, Emma and James walked the garden one more time. The winter sun was low, casting everything in amber light. The empty spaces where butterflies would come in summer felt full of possibility. I've been thinking, James said, about the future. Dangerous thing to do. I'm going to Portland next weekend to see Lily. She wants me to come to her school's winter concert. He paused. Would you want to come? Not to meet her, that's too much too soon, but to be there, to see this part of my life. Emma felt fear flutter in her chest, followed by something stronger. Trust. I'd love that. Really. Really, I want to know all the parts of you, James, even the scary ones. They sat on the central bench beneath the cherry tree in the garden Emma had built, and James had helped imagine. Around them, Seattle went about its evening traffic, in the distance lights coming on in windows, the city preparing for darkness. Do you ever think about that night, Emma asked? The wrong table, every day. Do you think we would have found each other if everything had gone right, if we'd sat at the correct tables, met the people we were supposed to meet? James considered. No, I think we needed to mess everything up first. Needed to be the wrong people in the wrong place. Because the right version of ourselves, the ones who had it all together, they never would have been honest enough to see each other. So you're saying disaster was necessary? I'm saying sometimes the best things come from beautiful mistakes. Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm glad we ended up at the wrong table. Me too. They sat as the sun set and the garden fell into shadow. The cherry tree above them was bare, waiting for spring. The lavender slept beneath the soil. The butterflies would return in their season. Everything was waiting dormant but alive, holding potential. Just like them. Emma thought about all the versions of herself. She'd been the perfect wife, the broken divorcee, the woman afraid to want anything because wanting meant risking loss. And now this new version, someone who chose staying over running, truth over perfection, love despite the certainty of pain. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no magic cure for Emma's infertility, no instant bond between James and his daughter, no guarantee that this love would survive all the challenges ahead. But it was real, earned, built on honesty instead of fantasy. I should probably tell you, Emma said, I almost ran away to Boston. James lifted his head. What? She told him about the job offer, the 2 weeks of indecision the moment she chose to stay. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to make the choice for me, not for you. I needed to stay because I wanted to build a life here, not because I was waiting for you to come back and make everything make sense. James was quiet for a long moment. Thank you. For what? For staying for yourself, for not making me responsible for your happiness. That's really healthy, Emma. We're both kind of a mess, but maybe we're getting better at it. Baby steps toward functional. I'll take it. They left the garden as stars began appearing. Emma locked the gate behind them, but she knew she'd be back tomorrow and the day after that. The garden was finished, but her relationship with it was just beginning. She'd watch it change through seasons, see it grow into what she'd imagined, and beyond it. Like everything worth building, it would take time. James walked her to her car, kissed her goodnight under the streetlights. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days after that, for as long as we can manage. That's not very romantic. It's honest, that's better. Emma drove home through streets that felt familiar, now really familiar. Not David's city or the place she'd ended up by default, but her city, her life, her choice. She thought about Sophie Delacroix, who'd seen gardens as time machines. Messages to future selves saying I was here. I hoped, I believed something beautiful would grow. Emma had planted her own garden now, not in soil, but in the life she was building. In the friendships that sustained her, the work that fulfilled her, the love she was learning to accept, even though it came with no guarantees. At home, she pulled out her sketchbook. Not for work this time, but for herself. She drew the cherry tree bare branches reaching toward sky, She drew it again with blossoms, again with leaves, again with fruit. All the seasons it would become. Her phone buzzed. James. Thank you for today, for the garden, for everything. Emma smiled, typing back, thank you for showing up, for staying, for being brave enough to try. We're quite a pair of disasters. The best kind. She set down her phone and looked at her drawings. The cherry tree in all its seasons, beautiful in each one, growing, changing, becoming. Like her, like them. The story wasn't finished. There would be hard days ahead. James's trips to Portland, Emma's grief over the children she'd never have, both of them learning by how to be in a relationship built on truth instead of fantasy. But they'd keep showing up, keep trying, keep choosing each other even when it was difficult. That was the real ending. Not perfection, but persistence. Not happily ever after, but hopefully ever forward. Emma closed her sketchbook and looked out her window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, James was probably doing the same thing. Two people who'd found each other by accident, who'd chosen each other on purpose, who were learning that love wasn't about having all the answers. It was about asking the questions together. Outside, it started to rain, gentle Seattle rain, the kind that made everything glisten. Emma watched the drops streak down her window, each one catching light, each one finding its own path down. She thought about gardens and time machines and messages to future selves. I was here, she thought. I hoped. I believed something beautiful could grow. And in the morning, she'd water those hopes. She'd tend to that belief. She'd show up again and again and again, because that's what gardens needed. That's what love needed. That's what they both would become. 6 months later, the cherry tree bloomed in April, exactly when Emma had predicted. The memorial garden exploded with color, lavender purple, butterfly bush orange, climbing roses pink and white. It became a neighborhood sanctuary, a place where people came to remember and heal. Mrs. Delacroix visited every Tuesday, sitting on the central bench with a book, watching the world Sophie would have loved. James's book was published in May. Not the novel his publisher had been expecting, but something raw and true about fatherhood and failure and second chances. It didn't become a bestseller, but it mattered to the people who read it. That was enough. He saw Lily twice a month, sometimes 3 times. The relationship was growing slowly, carefully. She called him James, not Dad. She showed him her artwork and her report cards and told him about soccer practice. It wasn't what he'd imagined fatherhood would be, but it was real. It was his. Emma designed 3 more memorial gardens that spring. Her work got noticed not just locally, but nationally. She turned down another offer from Boston, this time without hesitation. She knew where she belonged, and she and James kept showing up for each other, through hard days and good ones. Through James's anxiety about Portland, trips, and Emma's grief when another friend announced a pregnancy. Through arguments about dishes and whose turn it was to choose the restaurant and whether they were spending too much time together or not enough. Through all of it, they were learning that love wasn't about being perfect for each other. It was about being real with each other. On a Sunday in June, they took Mia to the memorial garden. She ran through the paths, chased butterflies, sat on every bench. At the cherry tree, she looked up at James and asked, "Do you think heaven has gardens?" James glanced at Emma. "I don't know. What do you think?" "I think it has to, because how else would people remember the beautiful things?" Later, after they dropped Mia back with Tom, Emma and James walked to Discovery Park one more time. Their spot overlooking the water had become a ritual, a place they returned to when they needed to remember where they'd started. "I love you," James said, watching the sunset paint the Olympics gold and pink. "I love you too. I'm still a disaster." "Me too. But maybe we're becoming better disasters." Emma laughed, the sound carrying across the water. "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. I'm working on it." They stood at the cliff edge, holding hands, looking out at a world that was equal parts beautiful and broken. Just like them. Just like everything worth loving. And in that moment, neither of them would have changed a single thing about the wrong table that had brought them together, or the hard path that had taught them how to stay.